Another Wednesday's come and gone, and I've got some comics. Let's talk about them. Hey, welcome to 9 Panel Grid. This week, we've seen rebellious teenage antics, retellings and reimaginations, and rogue special agent parents. But we're going to kick things off this week with Absolute Flash number 3, written by Jeff Lemire with artwork by Nick Robles. This is an interesting book to try to review because I feel like it's the encapsulation of everything we know and love about Jeff Lemire, but I can't quite put my finger on whether or not it's actually working for me within this title. It is like Jeff Lemire is one of those writers where it's all about what he shows you rather than tells you. He really lets an artist breathe and like do a lot of the heavy lifting. But for a book titled Flash, this is a slow burn book, which they feel like those two things shouldn't be together. And I feel like it's only half working here. They do a great job at kind of like visually telling you the events that are taking place, but those events that are taking place just feel like they are few and far between. Like the three issues that we're at basically feels like the events that would have taken place all within one single, maybe like ash can prelude that you would get to get you excited about the notion of a new Flash book, but it's really drawn out and we're not necessarily getting all of the beats and pieces of excitement that I would want after 3 issues. We should have a hook, we should have a mission statement for this book, and we don't quite have that yet. Visually, I do like what Nick is bringing to the book. I feel like there is an energy to his artwork. I like the portrayal of the Speed Force and how it looks much different than the electricity-based stuff that we get in the DC Prime universe. So there's cool aspects to it, but that's kind of like the only thing that we know about it. This issue did introduce more of the Rogues Gallery, which maybe isn't so much of the Rogues Gallery, so much as maybe a friend character to Wally West in this universe. So there's interesting aspects that they're playing with, but like, again, is it too little at this point? It might be that way. I don't know. I'm going to give this book a little bit more time to breathe and grow. I do enjoy what we've gotten. It just seems very, very sparse so far. So if you're not down for slow burn books, this might not be the one for you. Next up, we have Amazing Spider-Man number 4, written by Joe Kelly with artwork by Pepe Larraz. Pepe is definitely the star of this book. I really love the visuals that he's bringing forth. And since issue 1, I feel like each one has gotten incrementally better at portraying the things that are, actually happening. There's a lot of clean work that's done here. And I think that the only time that Pepe really is not working for me is when the colors demand that a darker palette be used. Because when that darker palette is there, Pepe's artwork doesn't pop off the page and it isn't as easily readable as some of the other events that are happening where it's big, bright, bold colors. Specifically, Spider-Man's suit, those blues and reds really pop. Regarding the storyline, some of the dialogue here is really difficult to kind of follow the through line from conversation to conversation. And part of that is just because of the nature of what's happening in this issue, where Peter has been drugged, he's going through these hallucinatory events, and Itsy Bitsy as a character already is a little bit hard to follow because the dialogue is very naturalistic and conversational, which means there's a lot of cutoffs and a lot of points where someone picks up a sentence after they are already speaking. So you really have to kind of follow along, and it's almost like Shakespearean, whereas it reads better when you read it out loud as opposed to reading the words that are printed on the page. So it's kind of working for me. The best parts of this book, though, are really going to be the flashback sequences. It brings a new, bold look at things that we knew about Peter, but didn't necessarily know the intricacies of them, I guess. There's cool things that are happening there. I really like seeing this new version of Pete that isn't necessarily so in tune with his aunt and uncle back in the past. It was times where he was trying to push away because of the nature of what's happened within his life. So Amazing Spider-Man kind of has me, kind of doesn't. I think that those flashback sequences really give me enough, though, to want to stick around and find out what Joe Kelly has to say with his character. All right, let's talk Into the Unbeing Part 2, Number 4, written by Zach Thompson with artwork by Hayden Sherman. So this is the end cap to the second portion of our story here within the Into the Unbeing storyline. and it was like really hard to follow along, like super super difficult. And I felt the same way at the ending of part 1, but then the introduction of the second part really picked up for me. Maybe part 3 does that for me as well here, as it's almost like an introductory place for a new storyline to kick off. It's all about the notion of these explorers who have been traversing this body, this huge mountainous body of a being that is on Earth, but they're trapped inside of it. And now what we thought was just that huge monstrosity kind of fighting against them, we're starting to see that there's more elements to it, where this body isn't necessarily the enemy so much as it's the parasites and the biological forms that are actually living within that body, almost like this was a shell to move those things over from one place to another. It's really reminiscent of the things that you see on like the history, or I'm sorry, not the History Channel, but like National Geographic, where there's a parasite that'll take over an insect and basically hijack its brain to make it do things. A lot like that, which the notion of that is incredibly scary. And when it's taking over human beings and these larger beings, the ones that they're exploring through, crazy, scary ideas. Now, the execution of that idea, I don't know if it's actually being done narratively. I think that the visuals by Hayden definitely sell that story because they are grotesque, they're bizarre. It's really unsettling in the best way. It's doing what the story should be doing, but narratively, it leaves me wanting a little bit more because I'm not necessarily sure who the good guys are at this point, who the bad guys, who am I rooting for, and what exactly is going on. Really difficult to follow the storyline, but again, maybe this is going to be the introduction to something I'm going to enjoy further when part 3 kicks off. Time will tell on that. We don't know for sure, but I'm definitely excited to see where they come through with this later on. Next up, we have Iron Man number 8, written by Spencer Ackerman with artwork by Julius Ota. This was cool. I really think that Iron Man is kind of finding its footing and finding a voice for what this book is going to be. And I'm really excited about that because I had levels of excitement with a new creative team taking over. And there were trepidations and there were some missteps early on, but I feel like they're starting to smooth themselves out. The bizarre part about this, though, is that this is a tie in to the One World Under Doom event. And they are playing with big ideas here about what it means to take on a nation, and more so than a nation at this point, a world leader, and how they're going to tackle that. And they're doing so in a very grounded, realistic way, even though we're talking about a man who puts on a suit that allows him to fly. But the idea of how to traverse the landscape of war and battling another nation, it's all present, it's all there. And the uneasy alliances that you form, and how maybe you form enemies by empowering other people that you need to work with. Really cool ideas. Here's the weird thing, though. The tone of this book is so grounded and so realistic and so serious, even for a Marvel book, that it almost feels like it's working against what's happening in the One World Under Doom book, where that still feels a little bit bombastic, a little bit comic-y, for lack of a better term. So while that still lives in the Marvel universe without a question, this one feels like almost a little bit removed, but we're still dealing with the same, I don't know, event. We're still dealing with the same ramifications and enemies and so on and so forth. But tonally, it's just so much different. It makes it kind of feel separated. But if they can keep that tone and keep that viewpoint and keep those kind of ideas flowing after the event and after they're kind of hamstrung into writing about Doom as a threat, this could be really cool. So I kind of like what I'm seeing here. I want to see what they can actually deliver after this event and maybe get a little runway for Tony to do some really cool things. I'm excited about the idea of what that could be. Again, time will tell. I feel like this is one of those time will tell kind of weeks with a lot of books. This is no different. I have to say, though, I'm enjoying what I have. All right, let's talk New Gods number 6, written by Ram V with artwork by Felipe Andrade and Evan Cagle. So Felipe takes the vast majority of this issue, and it's kind of cool how they play with this because it kind of takes most of its time almost in between what's happening in the prior issue. So in issue number 5, we kind of end with the death of a character, and he kind of toys with the idea of what does it mean for a god to die, and what happens after you die. And if you know Ram V, you know that he loves to kind of play with that idea and really play with, all of the different thought patterns that come along with that. This is no different. So this issue almost entirely takes place between almost like the couple last pages of the previous issue, where Light Ray is dealing with all of the things that have happened. He's kind of having this conversation with the Black Racer and kind of coming to terms with what has just transpired and how he's given his life up and what that's going to mean for him as a godlike being and what the Black Racer is doing in those events as well. Now, the end cap of this comes right back to where we finished off with the prior issue, where the JLA are absolutely there. They're ready to rock and roll. They're there to, I don't know, fight Orion or Mr. Miracle. They're kind of figuring out what is all happening right here. But lo and behold, something is happening on New Genesis, or even off New Genesis, coming to Earth, that they are now going to need to combine their might to help fight against. We'll see what the next issue delivers here. What I can tell you is that the artwork in this is fantastic. The ideas that Rom presents here are done masterfully, and it just pairs perfectly with that artwork that is very dreamlike and very ethereal when we're talking about the Black Racer and Light Ray. I loved the issue. It was really fantastic. This run has been one of those things that just kind of ramps up more and more emotionally as each issue comes through. From the looks of it, though, the next issue is more than likely going to be action-packed. All right, let's talk Nullhunter number 8, written by Michael Walsh and Aaron Losty, with artwork by Gustavo Vargas. This is the first issue of this series now where I feel like the feat of Hercules that they're trying to emulate doesn't quite match up for me. Maybe I'm missing some detail, but it doesn't necessarily give me the feeling of the thing that Hercules was supposed to be doing in the mythological aspect of it. This is all about the child that Clay has taken on, his ward basically, trying to save him. Clay's been captured, he's being held captive, and they're looking for some way, somehow to, get him back, basically, pull him back into the fight and allow him to continue his adventures and his secret fight that was against the gods themselves. So it doesn't quite match up with the story that I would have expected from the mythological aspect. It's a good story, and I like what we get here, and it was a fun time outside of following Clay the entire time, and the artwork definitely fits the bill. I've liked every single issue's artwork. This is no different. It's just that my expectations were subverted, and it doesn't necessarily mean it was in a bad way or a good way. It was just subverted. I don't know what that means necessarily, but the book was definitely enjoyable. It was just different, I'll say it that way. So overall, I'm still enjoying it, still having a good time here. This issue just definitely kind of threw me for a bit of a loop. Next up, we have Redcoat number 12, written by Jeff Johns with artwork by Brian Hitch. This is an awesome issue. This is like a really, really fun issue, as we're kind of done with the one issue storylines that we had here with Johnny Appleseed and Annie Oakley and things like that. And now we're back into the storyline proper that's pushing the plot forward. And we're actually finally having the events that take place between the Northerner and Redcoat himself. So we start to learn a little bit more about what's happening, and basically the immortality that Redcoat has, that Simon Pure has, is all based around the idea of the United States as a nation itself. And if that nation goes away, his immortality goes away. The Northerner is on his mission to make sure that basically the prime timeline events actually occur as they should be, where the North wins the Civil War. Well, now Simon and him are not necessarily working together, but they have the same objective that they need to work towards, and we're seeing that come to fruition. Now, the other cool thing is that we know that the Northerner has time travel capabilities. That's the only way that he knows about the future's events and all these alternate realities that could take place. But what we see is that someone working for the South also must have these capabilities, because he has a safe full of things from the future. How did he get those? We don't know. What does he intend to do with them? Probably make sure that the South wins. So it's nice to see that the plot is now moving forward here. I had a heck of a time with those one-shot issues where we got a story and it was in and out and done. Now it's pretty cool though that we're moving that timeline forward and we're getting closer and closer now to where Redcoat could be working with Geiger sometime in the future. We still have a ways to go, but we're getting closer and it's cool to see that plot moving forward. So Redcoat, it's been my favorite book out of the Ghost Machine universe. Nothing's done anything to change that. Next up, we have Spider-Man and Wolverine, #1, written by Mark Guggenheim with artwork by Kari Andrews. This is a blast of a book. This is way more fun than it ever had any, it didn't deserve to be as fun as it was. It was awesome. And I think a lot of that has to do with Kari Andrews. His artwork is astounding. And I was listening to an interview with him recently where he kind of said, I want to create comic books the way that comic books could and should feel, which is to say they shouldn't be emulated back into something that is a different medium. If you can make this scene and what I'm trying to convey into a movie, then I'm not doing this comic book justice, because a comic book is its own pure medium and I want to make comic books for comic book's sake, not for something to be adapted later on. He totally does that in this book. The way that he uses panels, the way that he does the visual storytelling aspects of this book, which is a lot to do with memory. Wolverine is remembering things from his past, and he's remembering enemies and fights that he's had. Peter Parker is learning about things not only from his own past, but his parents' past as well. There's a lot of things that are happening in this book that are opening up new memories here, and the way that they show those things is really masterfully done. Even just the simple conversations that go back and forth, they're being told in a very complex way visually that is done really incredibly well. I love how they are showing these things transpire. It's something different than you get from most comic books. He's definitely not taking the easy way out, and it shows and it's appreciated. The storyline itself is not a lot of revelatory things here. I know I'm talking about flashbacks and memories, and while that sounds like it could be ooh and ah and really cool, it's more fun than it is cool. We're not learning anything like earth-shatteringly new. It's things that we kind of know about, and it's kind of pulling on those ideas from the 90s, but it's doing so in a really fun, inventive way. So it's not going to change your life, but you're going to have a heck of a time with this book. Next up, we have Superman Unlimited, #1, written by Dan Slott with artwork by Raphael Albuquerque. This was okay. This was an interesting book, and it's kind of a weird comparison point that I'm about to make, but this book reminded me a lot of the movie Walk Hard. This was like the music biopics where an artist has to recollect and remember all of the events of his life and all the turmoil that he's gone through before he takes the stage for one last time. And that's kind of what we get in this issue, is that Superman is recounting and reliving all of the events that brought him, away from Krypton and brought him to Smallville and allowed him to be raised by the Kents and all of these things. And it's like, if you don't know Superman's origin story at this point, where have you been? What are you doing? But it spends so much time going through these events to get us to the end point where there's a revelatory thing that happens, but it's really not that crazy and really not that big. It could get more fun as time goes on, but I've never viewed Superman or Clark Kent as the most fun character to follow. It's always been his Boy Scouts and pure nature that has brought the fun forward, but he's never been the fun character. So I don't know, time will tell on this, but overall, this is very much a retelling and very much a origin story type of issue that we're getting here. So it was good, but it wasn't presenting anything new that made me excited. All right, let's talk The Ultimates, #12, written by Dennis Camp with artwork by Juan Frigeri. The Ultimates is definitely the linchpin of the Ultimate Universe, as it delivers basically all of the background information that you're going to need to know about what the Ultimate world is doing and what they're going through. And the closer that we get to the Maker's reemergence, what that really means for all of our characters. It does the best at that, and it definitely does the best at the moment in time. Each issue is one moment in a month's time frame, as it's kind of supposed to be taking place in real time as we get each issue. So we're at issue 12 months have transpired, and the Ultimates are kind of realizing that their initial plan is not working. They definitely have some people who have now gained their superpowers, and they got some of these superheroes to be back to the lives that they were always supposed to meant to have all of this time. But the plan is definitely not working. There was a moment in time where they went to go fight the Maker's Cabal, and things didn't work out for them, and they got out at the last second, but they find out that getting out at the last second isn't necessarily what they thought that it meant. Dennis Camp as a writer definitely is playing with time here in a really fun, creative way. And I think that there was maybe some moments where I was like, okay, maybe that's a step too far, especially when they are basically coming to heads with some of the decisions that are made by certain members of the Ultimates. Things kind of resolve very quickly and easily, which made me go, maybe that was a little bit too easy. But Dennis Camp does a great job of spinning it back on its own head and saying, oh, okay, well, it was easy, but here's the thing. The reason I say it's easy isn't meaning that it's going to be as easy as they think it is. So he does a good job at that, of basically turning the tables on that idea in itself and making things more difficult, complex, and maybe more fun for a reading experience as well. Juan Frigeri's artwork here is pretty good. It kind of retells a lot of the events that we saw recently with what was happening in the pages as the members of the Ultimates are recounting what has been happening here. And there's also a really cool revelation that we're seeing here that has it ties back into the Ultimates one year special that came out recently. And we know that Nick Fury is a part of this universe, and he definitely has something to do with where things are going to be moving forward here. So Ultimates is one of my favorite Ultimate books, obviously, because it has one of the title that basically says, hey, this is where this universe is going, but it's delivering on all those ideas as well. Next up, we have Wonder Woman number 21, written by Tom King with artwork by Guillaume March. This was an okay little side adventure. We've had a couple issues now where Daniel Sampere has been off the book, Guillaume March has been doing the artistic duties, and it's all been about Diana and Bruce, Batman, kind of investigating a murder mystery that's happened within, the gods arena. And it's been okay. However, I think it's been hampered by a couple different things that Tom King is kind of known for. One of those things being his love for the 9-panel grid, which sometimes can really work masterfully, but here I don't feel like it does. Guillaume's artistic approach with the 9-panel grid means that there's a lot of facial expressions and a lot of very, very quick close-ups of all of these characters that are having conversations back and forth. And it gives the book a claustrophobic feel and a claustrophobic, idea that doesn't service the story, because nothing about the story is necessarily claustrophobic. It's just the artistic approach. So it's not in service of the actual story itself. Furthermore, it's not leaning into what Guillaume does best as an artist, which, he draws these lovely figures, and we don't get those kind of things when you're so compressed and compact into those panels. Now, the other thing Tom King likes to do is he writes dialogue, and some of the dialogue in here is humorous and heartfelt and really naturalistic, and it comes off in a great way. Some of these lines actually made me chuckle. Some of them actually made me think too, right? He's a great writer. The problem is I don't know if the lines that are being delivered fit the characters that are actually delivering them. You can make the argument that the writer can do whatever the heck they want with these characters, but sometimes it just doesn't feel like it fits into what is actually happening with that character in that time in the universe. And that's how I feel about some of the lines that are being delivered here. It's a minor gripe, though. Overall, it was a cool little side story that we get with the murder mystery. I enjoyed my time here. Am I ready for Daniel Sampere to come back and for the greater storyline to take us to new directions? Absolutely. But did I like this? Sure. Next up, we have Zatanna number 4, written and drawn by Jamal Campbell. So this issue, I feel like, delivers more answers than any other issue that we've gotten previously about the idea of the curse that's been put on Zatanna, why the curse was put on Zatanna, what the greater plan is for the bad guys of this storyline, and where we're going to go from here. Is it too little too late, though? I don't know. Maybe time will tell. I'm enjoying this book visually. It looks stunning. I really like the majority of what we've gotten here. The only, I guess, nitpick I have is that sometimes the coloring gets a little muddy for the things that are happening, especially the big bombastic events where magic is taking place, where everything has a tendency to kind of feel a little bit samey. There's not enough contrast that we're getting delivered. Overall, though, I feel like it's really, really looking good. The storyline, though, just gets too all over the place. There's too much time that we're spending on things that don't feel cohesive, and there's really not a natural handoff to the events that are happening. So, overall, I'm enjoying my time here. I really like the look of this book, although I feel like what they could be doing and how they could be delivering the storyline could be done so a little bit better. And with my runner up pick of the week, let's talk Batman and Robin Year 1, Number 7, written by Mark Waid with artwork by Chris Samney. I'm having a blast with this book, and nothing has changed that at all. It is so freaking fun. This issue is doing a lot of the heavy lifting in developing the relationship between Bruce and Dick and Batman and Robin, as there's now a heightened level of trust and a heightened level of understanding of what their new roles actually are now, both as Dick being the ward to Batman and being the son of Bruce. He's taking a larger role of the responsibility in both of those aspects, and it really shows, especially through his interactions that he has with the people that are checking in on him to make sure that he's safe, and the schoolyard interactions that he's having. Batman is also stepping up and teaching Dick all of the different ways on how to approach these things. He's seeing the responsibility that he's taking. And as Batman, he's kind of learning how to basically lean into certain things and how to pull back on certain things. There's a really great relationship dynamic here that Mark Waid is kind of, doing the heavy lifting on and kind of doing that through the story itself. There's a lot of playful dialogue that he uses throughout this issue that really hits home, and it really works very, very well. Chris Samney on the artistic duties, I mean, can I say anything else? Like, the way that he composes a page is stunning. He knows when to pull back and show these dynamic set pieces from further out, so you get to really see the scope of everything that's happening. But he also knows when to pull in and look at the details for these little actions, the minutia, right? The devil's in the details, and he knows when to put those details in hyper focus. Mateus Lopez is on colors here, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. He's pulling on all of those color palettes used in Batman Year 1, and it feels like a classic book, although it still feels modern and new, and it brings all of those ideas and meshes them perfectly together. Batman and Robin Year 1 is going to be a perennial classic. It's going to be a special book. You definitely need to read it. So if you're not reading it right now, make sure that you keep your eyes open for when the trade or hardcover come out. You're going to love it. And with my top comic of the week, let's talk Spectrum number 6, written by Rick Quinn with artwork by Dave Chisholm. I've had such a great time with this series here, and this is the finale. This is the end cap. So this is going to be delivering all the resonance and all the feelings that we're supposed to be getting from this book that is all about kind of like the notion of creativity and art and music and what it means to, kind of take part in that creative process, but also to appreciate that creative process. But it's done so through this fantastical adventure that these characters are taking, where one of them has these, I guess, magical abilities, right? These abilities that are granted to her by way of music. And she kind of thought that she was being driven insane a little bit by hearing these voices and having these ideas. But what it really had boiled down to is these opposing forces that kind of personify the idea of creation and the idea of creation by way of, I don't know, kind of like a corporate idea of that's kind of like a mindless artwork for monetization rather than artwork through the means of creativity. So we have like the personification of those ideas doing battle and trying to basically, I don't know, take on the whims of all of these different creatives throughout time. And what we see is our two main characters are having to navigate the time stream and kind of find these different people, one of them particularly being the father of one of the main characters, and kind of get them out of the place where they're at, where they're being manipulated or hunted by these other different personifications. It's a lot to take in, but I think that as you do take it in and as you read the story, it opens up and really brings out these big ideas that you don't get traditionally from most other books. I feel like this took big swings and it was hitting home runs with almost every single issue on it. I love what they brought to the table. The artistic approach was very surreal, but also very grounded at the same time with the artistic approach that was being taken. There was a lot of scratchiness to it, but not scratchiness in the line work necessarily, but the tools that were being used. If there was something that was being colored in by color pencil, you see all the strokes of that color pencil. And it's that same way with each and every page and each and every idea through this book. Again, it was a book about creativity, and you can see the level of creativity that was put forth in making the book. That's what made it a unique, special experience here. I loved this story. I can't wait to see if this gets collected in a trade paperback or a deluxe edition. Rest assured, I'm definitely going to be checking that out if and when it comes out. But I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt that issues 1 through 6 were deserving. And this issue number 6, definitely holds its place as top comic of the week. So that's what I've got for you this week, but I'm more curious. What did you read, and what were your thoughts? Do me a favor, like, share, and subscribe, and be part of the panel. Leave me a comment down below. Thank you so much for watching. We'll talk to you next week.